alongside the guardrail, trying to put water in the radiator. Hate to tell you, Ken, the freight train's ready to leave town.
The Motorcraft 100.
They're racing, and just look at the starters. Jim Richards away from the inside smartly. Peter Brock goes with him. Johnson on the outside gets the best start of all, and Neville Crichton ranges up to put the pressure on the race leaders as they come storming down the front straight here with Richards, Neville Crichton and Peter Brock now coming for the inside run. Johnson's going to get the ham in the sandwich squeeze as they make it into the first turn. Brock pulls back just a little bit as they go through, and the black BMW will take over from Peter Brock. Third is Jim Richards as they come off the corner. A blinder of a start from the Llama man, Alan Jones, as they make their way down through the S's now. We have a great race going here as they come down to the left-hander, and it's Neville Crichton. Croaky Neville has taken over the lead as they come through the S's down to the oval for the first time. He hasn't made a really good start in any of the other 4 rounds, but he is off and running. Brock in second, Johnson is third, Richards is fourth. They're followed by Alan Jones, Robbie Francevic and Kent Bajan.
Oh, can they keep this up for 100 Ks round here? 42 laps of Adelaide International Raceway, and Neville Crichton, goodness me. Jim Richards really got muscled back off pole position, and Crichton started like greased lightning. And in the side-by-side run through the first corner, he managed to survive despite the fact that he was on the outside, Neil.
Yes, and they've done a rebuild on the Crichton car since the Wanneroo round, where they bent the subframe, and here comes Peter Brock in car 05 through on the inside, and that's a clever piece of work. Jim Richards in behind Crichton, then Dick Johnson, Alan Jones, Robbie Francevic. So Crichton this weekend running the ex-Jim Richards engine in this car. So it's certainly got some horses at the moment. They found their old engine was way down on power. There's Bajan, the other BMW, Wilmington, Tim Slako in the Rover, Don Smith, Kevin Bartlett. Quite an enormous field, and good news for next weekend that there'll be 27 cars lining up at Calder.
I'll tell you what, Richards is keen to go faster. He's made up for that tardy start with a lightning move down the main straight last time, and now coming onto the bowl again. Brock leads Crichton. Richards keen to get under his teammate Johnson Park right in behind those, and then a little bit of a gap now to Alan Jones, Robbie Francevic and Kent Bajan.
The pressure is on the race leader, Peter Brock, as they come along the front straight here at Adelaide International Raceway. Richards making the move up now on the inside of Neville Crichton. We'll see if he'll take him here on the inside. Johnson was thinking about getting there on the inside as well, but Jim Richards passes teammate Crichton, now moves to second place. Crichton is third, Dick Johnson is fourth as they exit the Humes corner and now down towards the left-hander.
And Robbie Francevic got Alan Jones at the bottom of the straight as well, and Bajan in behind him. So it's Brock, then Richards, Crichton, Johnson. Dick Johnson this weekend, having had his engine out on the dyno, found another 15 brake horsepower, makes a dive at Crichton. Crichton drops back to fourth. So the order now, Brock, Richards and Johnson.
Good move from Dick Johnson in car number 17. He is now to third. Neville Crichton to fourth, and Robbie Francevic to fifth. Sixth is Alan Jones, and seventh is Kent Bajan. They were then followed by Tim Slako in the Rover, and the next is Colin Bond. Gary Wilmington, Kevin Bartlett is the next one through as they come onto the straightaway again.
Pace is really frantic in the opening laps of this 5th round of the Australian Touring Car Championship, the Motorcraft 100 at Adelaide International Raceway, and the two cars, the two drivers that look keen to go even faster are Jimmy Richards and Dick Johnson, but they've got to get by this man, Peter Brock, as they go through the right-hand sweeper again.
Brock and both the BMWs using radial slick tyres this weekend. Johnson still on cross-ply conventional slick tyres. Quite a gap back to our 5th place driver, Robbie Francevic. Behind him, Alan Jones. You can see Kent Bajan behind him.
Talking about gaps, Peter Williamson, who started from 13th position on the grid in his Toyota Supra, has moved up to 8th spot.
1.7 seconds separates the first 4 cars as now Jim Richards takes a dive on the inside as they come out of the bowl onto the straight, and he is much better positioned this time. Gets right in behind Peter Brock.
In fact, I think he might even make the move. We're following the dice, as you can see at the front of the field. There's Brock leading
and shaking him. Richards dives to the outside. Brock cleverly gets him out from behind the draft. So Richards would have to go around the long way if he's going to be able to do it at all.
While all this is going on, Robbie Francevic is only crawling back down the main straightaway. Something amiss with his Volvo. He's out of contention.
Look at this. Jim Richards tucked right in behind Brock. I think he may have even given him a little touch on that occasion. The two of them former teammates, winners at Bathurst in 78, 9 and 80. But no love lost this weekend. They've shared the front row of the grids on a couple of occasions, and Brock desperate to try and find out what sort of limitation this BMW has this weekend.
Well, he's testing it because he's maybe slowed the pace up just a titch, because Johnson has now moved onto the tail of Jim Richards to give him some hurry up, and they're running away slightly from Neville Crichton. To the bottom end of the bowl again, we're following first, second and third. Peter Brock leads the Motorcraft 100. Second held by Jimmy Richards. Third across the strike is Queensland's Dick Johnson, as we take race cam and follow the form of Brock and also the tactics of Brock.
In the last 2 years of the Australian Touring Car Championship here in Adelaide, we've had fantastic finishes and fantastic dices in this race as Richards goes to the outside of Brock. Again, we look through the eyes of race cam. Richards dabs on the brakes, which he wouldn't want to have done there.
Here's
Johnson uses the opportunity to go through on the inside. Will he get him? It's so close.
Almost a touch there. Could have in fact been a touch. That's how close they were. That let Brock with a little pressure off him as they come down towards the Bridgestone S's again. Brock, the black BMW with Richards at the wheel, and Queensland's Dick Johnson in third. Back on to the oval again.
There's the tricky bit, through the S's, over that reverse camber, and it really does put the tail of the car out of shape, doesn't it?
Certainly does. We haven't seen the BMW this year really pushed on tyres, and I'll be very interested to see towards the end of the 42 laps what sort of shape Jim Richards is in as far as tyres are concerned.
Crichton continues to hold down fourth ahead of another BMW driven by Kent Bagent, then Alan Jones in the first of the Alphas, Peter Williamson in the Toyota Supra, then Colin Bond in the second Alpha car.
Peter Brock giving Jim Richards the slip once again, diving all over the main straight, making sure that he gives no advantage to Jim Richards in the slipstream. Meanwhile, Dick Johnson closes under brakes. This Mustang with superb four-wheel disc brakes.
Six-cylinder German BMW in a V8 sandwich.
Down towards the S's again. Peter Brock just a little ahead of Jimmy Richards. Richards was closer the last time through this part of the course, and Dick Johnson clinging to the back of the black BMW.
They have set a fantastic pace and are closing rapidly on Mike Minear in the little Volvo, who tails the field, and they're about to slip by him. In fact, once they come off the bowl and straighten up, they'll close on him very, very rapidly.
Yeah, Brock has got Richards well positioned here for the pass on Minear. You can see Minear's arm already out the window, had it up there a quarter of a lap ago to let them know which side of the track to pass him on.
He's been taking weight training with that arm, he tells me, Mike.
Look at this. Here's Richards making a move again. Pocket pool time. They split a triumph in the middle of the field, and Brock still hangs on to the lead. Richards hugging the inside line. Johnson is still there in third. This is a fantastic Group A race.
We saw Wayne from the Mobile Holden dealer team before with the sign out at a 61.1 for Brock, so they're a little off their qualifying pace, which is understandable. But certainly Dick Johnson the improver in the bunch here, because he's been giving away horsepower in the previous 4 rounds, and he's right up in the teeth of it at the moment.
Wait till the fuel load goes down a bit and the traffic starts to thin out. Those times are going to start clicking over a little bit faster, I'd say. Oh, Johnson is right on the tail of Jimmy Richards.
58.1, the lap record here at Adelaide for Peter Brock last year in the Group C Commodore. They've already got to within 1.5 seconds of those times.
Richards making a big lunge this time, and they're going to play draft down the straight. Brock has a look in the mirror, leads him across to the right-hand side of the circuit. They're trying to coax Richards right around the outside of him as they come up into the bend.
Tries the outside, he'll duck back and try and come under, but Brock, I think you'll find, is a little bit too wise for that.
The two of them will have to be very careful, because Dick will slip straight through there in that Mustang.
He knows what's going on up front.
Johnson did this last year because this same race produced a great dice between Alan Grice and Peter Brock, and he sat there and waited for mistakes to be made. He's doing exactly the same in 85. Richards on the brakes a lot earlier than Peter Brock as they come up to this off-camber left-hander, and look at them, nose to tail. 05 Peter Brock, Jim Richards in the BMW, Dick Johnson car 17 in third.
There's a long way to go yet in this race. Can they stand this pace?
Coming off the bowl again, back onto the long straight, AGC straight. Peter Brock looking in the rear mirror.
What can Richards try this time? There aren't too many choices. He's got to try and catch Brock napping. It's a long time since anybody did that.
And Brock has very cleverly been able to position himself every time at the end of the straight so that Richards would have to do it the hard way and go around the outside. Controlling the race from the top of the field, as Peter Brock knows how to only so well.
Here's his move. Just feints a little move there with the black BMW. Brock is controlling this beautifully from the front of the field down through to the S's, and the left-hander back onto the oval. Brock gets out of there. What's the acceleration between the Commodore and the BMW? To the right-hander at the bottom of the bowl. Motorcraft corner comes up.
Commodore naturally with a little bit more torque pulling away in the tighter corners, but this BMW handling superbly, and Richards so far all weekend has been in very good shape. There's the times. Dick Johnson and the Holden dealer team both with a 61.2.
We're 10 laps into the Australian Touring Car Championship, and here comes the challenge on the outside again. Jimmy Richards. Brock goes in even deeper. Richards set him up this time, see if he can pull the white line. He can't. Through Humes and down to the S's again.
This might be a chance.
Keeping the pressure on. I don't know whether Brock will want to give way. He won't. Jim's going to range up here on the outside and takes the lead. A beautiful pass that time from Jimmy Richards in car number 62. He's taken over the lead.
Oh, look, he's pulling away quite dramatically too.
Brilliant stuff, the two of them side by side, not even exchanging paint, and that was a very clever piece of driving from Jim Richards.
Well, you've got to give him points for trying. He kept harrying away there at the rear of Brock's Commodore for 10 laps. And finally, after not being able to get by at a dozen tries at the bottom of the main straight, took him through the S's.
1.5 seconds from first to third.
A quarter race distance gone. Jim Richards is the leader. Peter Brock in second place, and Dick Johnson holding down third in the 5th round of the Australian Touring Car Championship. Round 5 of the Australian Touring Car Championship, and this man is holding down 5th place on the racetrack at the moment. It's Kent Bagent from New Zealand driving a BMW, his first ever campaign in Australia, and he's doing pretty well to hold down 5th. Not so well for another Kiwi, Robbie Francevic in the Mark Petch Volvo. Didn't survive the pace of the early laps and expired down the main straight and had to roll off on the grass over by the S's. Bagent, however, doing it well. Up in front of him, he's got Crichton holding down 4th spot, Dick Johnson in 3rd, Jim Richards in Peter Brock rather in 2nd, and Jim Richards, of course, making the pace.
This car was campaigned in last year's European Touring Car Championship and ran 3rd in Spa as they come up alongside here. Car number 11. This is Drew Price and Bob Holden there in car 13. Drew Price having his first run for Team Toyota Australia this weekend, 14-time Australian karting champion. But Bagent has put in a very good performance. Bought the car back in September of last year and has run it in the New Zealand Group A series. Has been leading a couple of the races over there in Pukekohe and Wellington, but unfortunately various problems have put him out of business. But showing a lot of performance potential. The car expertly set up on Friday by Neil Lowe, his co-driver. It only arrived here in Melbourne on Wednesday. They drove the car overnight on Wednesday night, arrived here in Adelaide on Thursday, and since then they've been frantically working to try and get themselves set up just for the little things in life. They've borrowed Rusty French's, or in fact leased Rusty French's transporter, and currently working about the task of setting up their team here in Australia.
Impressive performance at their first outing.
It's the car built by Schnitzer BMW, of course, a pseudo works car if you like, but very impressed with the way that they've engineered this car and very impressed with the way that they qualified so well yesterday.
Cars come on to the front straight. There's Kent Bagent going through. Dick Johnson, of course, carrying race cam for our viewers today, and we've been able to take some magnificent pics from Dick Johnson, particularly during the hectic opening laps of this race. And Dick Johnson is aboard and running in that familiar 3rd position as he comes down to the S's. We'll have a chat with Dick shortly as soon as he gets through this tricky part and drops into the oval. Mike Raymond, Dick Johnson, how are things at this stage of the race for you, Dick?
Mate, it'll be all right except for those bloody dickheads in the slow cars. Strike, I tell you what, they get so far and they couldn't do a better job of getting in the run if they tried.
Yes, it's not really the racetrack you need to run up on slower cars on this oval section of the course.
You're not wrong. There's a BMW there that I reckon I could run faster than.
The hectic opening laps of the race, Dick, that was quite a scrape.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We've got one black BMW in front of me, one behind me. Look at that Frank Gardner and his All Blacks. I think they've been masquerading over here as New Zealanders, but I think they're South African.
Oh, you know how to put the bird in, don't you?
Oh, well, you never know, mate.
You want to be careful. They might let you out of Queensland next time.
Mate, I could be lucky.
Oh, by gee, the pace really is a cracker. Dick, what's your plan from here? You just going to see if these guys up front of you make a mistake?
Yeah, I just got to drive the wheels off this thing and hope that their tyres go off.
Are you pushing it as hard as you can at the moment, Dick?
Well, mate, if my foot was any further down, it'd be through to the floor.
Tyres in good shape?
Tyres are fine. Everything's just fine. The temperature gauge on 160 degrees. I think I might have to put something over the radiator.
Dick, it's interesting watching your feet here. Your heel and toe, obviously.
Yeah, you got... I'll give you a bit of a demo in a minute, mate. It's just... this right hander here, this thing handles so good, you would catch them. Actually, I touched Brock a couple of times.
We noticed.
Which was a bit unintentional.
Just a bit.
And I'll have to apologise to him for that. Which if you're in it now, this is a heel and toe. Where you put your heel on the throttle and your toe on the brake.
That's nicely coordinated, Dick, obviously, for a smooth change.
Yeah, mate. It's just a matter of sort of getting the coordination right. Otherwise, you end up screwing up all the synchros in the gearbox.
Dick, I said before that that extra 15 or so brake horsepower seems to have put you in pretty good stead down the straight.
Pretty good stead, mate. They run away from me. I'm glad I've got a bit more than what I used to have.
Well, you've got the handling now, Dick. Is there any more power to come? Can you squeeze any more out of it?
Well, I hope so. Because this is a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Like third place, mate. That seems to be it.
Yes, well, that doesn't settle too well with you. You like to be a front runner. The thing that surprised me was the fact that once Jim Richards was able to get through on Peter Brock, he was able to open that up well and truly.
Yeah, well, Brock was reasonably slow through that corner there, which is coming onto the bowl. But where they get you is they just squirt out of here and get thrown up in front of you on the bowl, on this end of the bowl, so that when you come to the straightaway, like I've got my boot hard into it now, like from halfway through the bowl all the way out, and I just can't go any quicker, and they drive away from you.
Well, your Mustang might have the handling, Dick, but Don Smith hasn't got it in 33 because while you were chatting, he just spun coming out of that corner off the bowl. He's up and running again, but it's a tricky corner, that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You've got to sort of concentrate pretty hard, and I suppose that makes all the difference.
All right, Dick, we'll let you get back with your concentration for the race, and we'll come back and talk with you later, and thanks very much again.
Thanks, Mike.
Alan Jones in the Alfa Romeo GTV6 2.5 litre all-alloy V6 fuel-injected engine and performing extremely well at the moment. AJ has been giving this little car a punishing throughout season 85, getting himself back in shape for the Formula One season in the latter half of the year. It's funny, just quickly talking about Don Smith, he did exactly the same thing yesterday in practice and just managed to miss the fence by about 6 inches.
Well, he must have practiced it well because he did it exactly the same way today.
Yeah, well rehearsed.
Jones is holding down 6th position on the racetrack at the present time, with Richards continuing to lead Brock, then Johnson, then Crichton, then Bagent, and then Jones in the little 2.5 litre Alpha. Down on power, but an amazing handling car, this one. Not suited by these big open stretches in Adelaide.
Well, it's about 245 odd brake horsepower and tipped the scales in yesterday at about 1,000 kilograms. And you can see not too far in the background is his teammate Colin Bond. But Jones's performance so far this year netting him 2 4th placings, a 7th and a 6th. So today we're exactly halfway through the Australian Touring Car Championship, and one of the confusing aspects of this year's points table is the fact that you have to drop one round. You drop your worst round, so people like Jim Richards, Neville Crichton, Alan Jones and so on have to drop their worst performance, which in actual fact will close this points table.
The Alpha's running 6th and 7th on the racetrack at the moment. Up front, Jim Richards, the leader. Peter Brock is in 2nd place. Dick Johnson holding down 3rd in the 5th round of the Touring Car Championship.
The Australian Touring Car Championship, the Motorcraft 100, continues at Adelaide International Raceway. Gary Wilmington going through in the Jaguar XJS, currently running 9th on the racetrack. And one of the fastest cars down the front straight here in practice throughout the week. Just past the halfway mark in round 5 of the championship. And here's Wilmington coming into Hume's corner in car number 12. A little more sponsorship on the car for today's 5th round as he moves on down now towards the S's.
This is the highest horsepower car in the race, the V12 Jaguar. Also the heaviest car, produces about 450 brake horsepower, and of course so far in the series things haven't been all roses for Gary Wilmington. It was a power steering failure back at Winton which put him out, then subsequent gearbox failure at Sandown. We didn't see him at Simmons or Wanneroo, and comes back this weekend after having run, of course, at the Better Brake Series at Amaroo Park a couple of weeks ago. So Gary Wilmington getting back into shape once again, and the long open spaces of Adelaide starting to help a little, and the news comes through that Alan Jones has retired to the pits in car 27.
Coming off the bend, Wilmington, not far behind him is Tim Slako of Western Australia, and of course Kevin Bartlett in the Mitsubishi Starion. So Wilmington bringing the XJS down to the right-hander at Humes. He's running in 9th. There's the 10th place driver, Tim Slako. Jim Richards, the race leader, is coming up on this group of race cars. Not far in arrears. To them, of course, is Kevin Bartlett in the Mitsubishi Starion.
Kevin Bartlett's had a 3rd placing in the series in the opening round at Winton. Finished 8th at Sandown, 7th at Wanneroo, and didn't start, of course, at Symonds Plains in Tasmania. The car still waiting on some new parts. There's Jones, as we told you, in the pits, and you can see they're having trouble here with looks like a brake, I think. Trying to get that wheel off, and it's red hot. Looking on anxiously as they work away there. They've got a fresh wheel. Now obviously he's got a deflating tyre. This has cost them valuable time, and meantime his teammate Colin Bond has gone through to assume the place. There's Jones, fingers tapping on the wheel, and look at the set look on the face, as inscrutable as a Tibetan Lama. Enrico Zanarini from Alpha.
So he's got quite a dilemma of his own there. He should have had the wheel and tyre on and been out on the racetrack, so they really do have a major problem. Jones patiently sits in the car. Now they should be ready to dispatch the Alpha back out onto the racetrack. Fairly untidy or disorganised pit stop that time, and an unexpected one from Alan Jones in car number 27.
They've lost a couple of valuable laps there, Alan Jones, and still not back on the track. Back on the racetrack though, Tim Slako in the Rover, in pursuit of Wilmington in the big Jag, in 7th and in 8th and 9th spots on the racetrack.
And here's Peter Brock moving up to put a lap on Tim Slako rather, as he does quite easily. Slako moving to the outside to enable him the fast line through the corner. Kevin Bartlett, meantime, is gaining a little ground on that Rover, car number 19, as they come down through the S's and back onto the oval again. So the scrap still continues with Jim Richards opening that gap up over Peter Brock to probably about 200 metres. And then from Brock to Dick Johnson is probably another 200 metres.
The traffic has helped Richards establish that break, but now that Brock has got past those cars, he's set out in pursuit as we watch Kevin Bartlett tagging onto that group of 3, Slako, Wilmington and Bartlett. Slako by the Jag, so the Jag not running all that well for Wilmington again today, but it really is a finicky car. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of technical know-how to get it running just right, and that hasn't happened for them yet. Bartlett with an intercooler and some suspension parts to come under the new homologation in August, which will give him better handling and more horsepower, and he cannot wait for that to happen. He's a bit of a frustrated man and has had a bit of a nudge, or has given somebody a nudge there in that tight racing in the early stages of the race. The front of the car just a little out of shape. He's not doing too bad, though, to be running up there with the Rover and the Jag at this stage of the race.
Not at all. Coming round to put a lap on Martin Power in the Triumph, and pulls away from him quite comfortably. It won't be too long before he has Dick Johnson on his tail coming up to complete a lapping manoeuvre there. So Bartlett will still be running in the top 10. Let's go down to the pits now and to Neil Crompton.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I didn't get a chance to catch up with Alan Jones, who shot out the pit lane, but we managed to find out what the problem was. If you have a look here on the Pirelli radial that they're using, it's got an enormous flat spot on it, which has taken it right through to the actual metal fibre in the tyre. So Alan Jones has had to come in and put a brand new set of tyres in. There's an enormous flat spot around the outside of that area. And Enrico Zanaridi, the team manager of Alfa Romeo, did you have a chance to talk to Alan at all?
No, I didn't, but we knew he was locking up the front left-hand tyre, and we knew he had a problem. His time that dropped considerably now. We have Colin in front, still leading the class. We hope we can manage to come on first.
Any idea why the brake has been locking up?
No, it only appeared after 6 or 7 laps, and we have no idea at this stage. We have a look at the brake at the end of the race, and we'll let you know.
Thanks, Enrico. So that's the situation down here at the moment, Mike. The flat spot on Jones's car, back on the circuit, but obviously a long way back.
Thank you, Neil. A report coming to us from Neil in the pit area. Car number 11 on screen at the moment. Joining the field today, Drew Price. Neil mentioned a little earlier today, Toyota coming up with their Corolla and the Sprinter today. And of course we have Peter Williamson here in the Toyota Supra. So Toyota certainly well represented.
30 laps gone in this 42-lap race for the 5th round of the Touring Car Championship. We've seen Alan Jones come and go from the pits. That big Jag of Gary Wilmington's is in there at the moment as the race continues. Smith also has been in the pits and is a lap down, in fact, on proceedings at the present time. So all not running well for the small capacity Toyota team at the present time.
The Toyota goes through and moves down towards the S's. It's recapping the fact that Jim Richards still maintaining that very easy pace over Peter Brock in the Commodore, and Dick Johnson in 3rd.
Drew Price, a man with a lot of motorsport experience, although not previously in this category in the Touring Car Championship. He's finding out what it's all about today, because up front, Jim Richards in 62, the BMW, continues to make the pace from Peter Brock in the 05 Commodore and Dick Johnson in the Mustang. Nine laps left in the 5th round of the Touring Car Championship for 85. Welcome back, Peter Williamson. Willow is in 7th position on the racetrack in car 77, the Toyota Supra. There goes Peter Brock putting a lap on him, but it's still a mighty performance. First out in a long time for Willow after having the car virtually destroyed on the starting grid in the James Hardy 1000 last year, Mike.
Yes, we haven't seen the car. Obviously, we haven't seen Peter since then, but the car has been turned out magnificently here in this beautiful orange colour. I think he got away from the other colour after the bad luck at Bathurst, but the car has been running quite smoothly here, and 7th is not too bad at all for Peter Williamson in car number 77.
Well, not when you consider the cars that are up front of him on the racetrack. Jim Richards, Peter Brock, Dick Johnson, Neville Crichton, Kent Bagent in the other BMW, then Colin Bond in the Alpha, and then Peter Williamson.
He's done very well indeed. Coming down to the S's, probably one of the stars of the practice leading up to qualifying yesterday for the championship round. Been driving the car very, very aggressively indeed. As you'll notice, particularly in the next corner, has been throwing the car around.
Here he comes onto the speed bowl, and it's the exit from the speed bowl onto the straight, where the drivers really do have to work surprisingly hard. If you can get a look at his hands on the wheel, look at him working overtime like a one-arm paper hanger in a gale.
Here they come down the straight. Williamson, who has already been passed by Brock, and Dick Johnson already at the tail end of that straight. So the race leader Jim Richards and in fact Peter Brock have been going away from Dick Johnson. Bob Holden about to be passed there on the inside. There wasn't too much in that as Williamson dived beneath him, working down to Hume's Loop. That takes them on the short run down now to the S's. Coming up with some of these slower cars who are put in at the tail of the field, the Ford Escort of Ken Harrison and the Triumph of Martin Power.
This car of Peter Williamson's, of course, people may forget, was imported originally as a fully developed race car for Bathurst last year, having been successful in Group A racing in Europe. But of course, as we said, it really isn't the same car when you consider the destruction that took place at Bathurst, and it's been rebuilt virtually from the ground up. Bit of a traffic jam at this stage of the race too. Willow's locked in behind it. Yes, look at them.
Williamson goes past a couple of the slower cars, and I refer then to the Harrison car and also the Power car, which he passed half a lap ago. And not too far back behind them also Drew Price, so he's still making progress in this field, is Peter Williamson. Dickie Johnson still running third on the racetrack. Just look at the traffic here. There's Dick with one coming up and being waved to the outside by car number 13 as they come down. That's Bob Holden, the veteran driver.
Yes, and Dick was a little uncomplimentary there, I think, as he went through. Bob was getting out of the way as quick as he could. It just wasn't quick enough for Dick's liking, but because he's really got the power down and endeavouring to close the gap on the leading pair. But I think with time running out, that's going to be his big problem. There just won't be enough left before the checkered flag drops.
They come through the bowl area again and back onto the straight. There you can see the huge crowd. There off to the left along the full straight here at Adelaide International Raceway, one of the biggest crowds they've had here for a touring car race. As you can see, all the way down the straight here at Adelaide.
Past John Smith and Drew Price. Smithy, before I noticed when I was down in the pits, Mike, the car had a pretty nasty misfire.
Through Hume's corner. And Alan Jones is back out on the racetrack. And still pounding away. He's got Peter Brock not that far behind him too. And he is really starting to throw this car around again. Down onto the bowl area, heading down to the right-hander at Motorcraft.
He's in 10th position on the racetrack, despite the time lost while he was in the pits, and really does know how to drive a motor car, doesn't he, Alan Jones? His preparation to return to Formula One motor racing. Wealth of experience, and he really has made a great contribution to the Touring Car Championship in Australia in 1985. He is phenomenal entertainment value. Loves to drive that big car hard.
Alan Jones is the outright lap record holder here, Gary, in the Lola T32 at a time of 49.5 seconds. Let's have a look at some of the details about the man, Alan Jones. These days living in Queensland, 38 years of age, driving this weekend at Alfa Romeo, 4th at Winton, 4th at Sandown, 7th at Simmons and 6th at Wanneroo, and currently lies 3rd in the championship with a total of 69 points, and of course was the 1980 World Formula One champion.
So Alan Jones
is also the lap record holder in a Porsche 935 here in a sports car as well, so he's got some good things going for him in Adelaide. Alan Jones with Peter Brock right behind now in car 05. Tim Slako goes out to the left of your screen in the Rover. Colin Bond in the background, and you can see just exactly what brake horsepower can do for you here as Peter Brock goes through, overtaking Alan Jones. It was the Alan Jones engine a couple of weeks ago at Amaroo Park which Colin Bond was running. They've had a chance to do some more maintenance, preventative maintenance work on the Jones car since then, and its performance again in practice yesterday was quite impressive considering its size and its horsepower and so on. Jones' car, the car that won at Estoril last year in the Touring Car Championship overseas. If you look here at Racecam and Dick Johnson in the back of Peter Williamson's Toyota Supra, which has been totally rebuilt since last year's James Hardy 1000. Only about 30% of the existing body shell still being used. Around about $35,000 odd worth of work has been put into this car to get it back ship-shape once again, and it's great to see Willow back on the circuit. The man who first brought us Racecam back in 1979. did a stretch in the Tolman Formula Mondial car. So we'll go back here to our leader.
As Peter Williamson waves by Dick Johnson, here's the man who's been setting the pace and dictating it totally after being able to work around the outside of Peter Brock, and that's Jimmy Richards in car number 62, the man who leads the points championship, the man who won, of course, at Winton, and the man who won again at Wanneroo.
So far, 3 pole positions: a first, a second at Sandown, a 5th at Symonds Plains, a first, of course, at Wanneroo, and looking as though he might be able to do it again this weekend. Leads the points table, as we've mentioned on a couple of occasions, with a total of 88 points, 13 clear of his teammate Neville Crichton on 75, who is in turn 6 points clear of Alan Jones on 69. But bear in mind that Jim Richards and Neville Crichton, and indeed Alan Jones, are going to have to drop their worst performance after the 10 rounds of this year's 26th Australian Touring Car Championship.
Well, when the Group A National Championship started back at Winton, everyone was predicting he was set for a marvellous season in car number 62, Jim Richards. But hard work on the part of Frank Gardner and the JPS BMW team bringing it to fruition. They never stop their development program. They're always to be found in between race meetings at Sydney's Amaroo Park with Frank Gardner driving the car. Some splendid driving today also from Neville Crichton, coming down into the bowl area and preparing for the checkered flag. The last corner coming up and standing on it as he comes out, and he's going to win it. The national championship points leader Jimmy Richards takes round 5 here this afternoon at Adelaide International Raceway. Peter Brock will take second, and Queensland's Dick Johnson will take third. But the BMW power has struck again here at Adelaide before an absolute capacity crowd. There's the checkered flag from Glenn Dix as Dick Johnson goes across the strike to pick up third in the green Mustang. Well, some of the closest racing that we've seen in the opening laps of any race here today for round 5. The scrap that involved Jim Richards, Neville Crichton, Peter Brock and Dick Johnson. Great stuff. And I'm sure that we're going to see a lot more of that as the Australian Touring Car Championship for 85 unfolds. We move to a tight circuit next weekend in Melbourne's Calder Park. So the championship is far from over. So recapping the placings of round number 5. Richards, the winner. Second place going to Peter Brock, and third place going to Dick Johnson.